The rain came down thin and silver over the private airfield, turning the runway lights into long trembling lines across the black pavement. Under the belly of a white executive jet, Elijah Brooks lay on his back with a flashlight between his teeth and one gloved hand pressed against the cold metal housing of the forward landing gear. His uniform had his name stitched over the heart, though the thread was fading. Brooks. Most people at Whitmore Field never looked long enough to read it. To them, he was just night maintenance. The man who appeared after the champagne glasses were cleared, after the wealthy passengers stopped walking through the hangar like the world had been built to hurry for them. Elijah did not mind the silence. Silence paid attention. Noise missed things. His phone buzzed against the concrete beside his toolbox. He slid out from under the jet, wiped rainwater from the screen with the back of his wrist, and saw the school nurse's name. Tanya Brooks. Not family, despite the last name. Just the only person at Noah's school who still called before things got bad. Elijah answered quietly. "This is Brooks." On the other end, Tanya lowered her voice. Noah was wheezing again. "Not hospital bad," she said, "not yet, but enough that the little boy had asked whether his dad was coming." Elijah looked across the hangar at the clock. 11:42 p.m. His shift was supposed to end at midnight. Supposed to. "Tell him I'm checking one last bird," Elijah said. "Then I'm on my way." There was a pause, then a small voice came on, soft and strained. "Daddy?" Elijah's face changed before his voice did. Softer around the eyes. Steadier in the mouth. "Hey, champ. Did you check it twice?" Noah asked. Elijah looked down at the small paper airplane tucked into the side pocket of his toolbox, folded from an old inspection sheet, the one Noah had made that morning at the kitchen table while eating cereal without milk because the carton had gone sour overnight. On one wing, in crooked pencil letters, the boy had written, "Daddy checks things twice." Elijah touched the paper once with 2 fingers. "Always," he said. "That's why people get home." Noah breathed in, a little too shallow. "Okay." Elijah closed his eyes for half a second. He could hear the child trying to be brave. That hurt worse than panic. "Keep your shoulders loose," Elijah said. "Like we practiced. In through the nose. Slow out. Like blowing birthday candles. Like you got all the time in the world." The line clicked back to Tanya, and she promised to keep him updated. Elijah thanked her, ended the call, and sat still for one moment beneath the jet's shadow. His rent was 4 days late. Noah's inhaler had 2 weeks left if they were careful. His old truck needed a starter. His supervisor had already warned him that one more delay, one more extra inspection, would put his name on the wrong list. Elijah folded those facts away the way he folded every hard thing. Neat. Quiet. Out of sight. Then he picked up his light and went back to work. Near the hangar doors, 2 junior crewmen laughed over coffee, one of them watching him crawl under the aircraft again. "Brooks still playing detective," the younger one said. "Man checks rich folks' toys like they're space shuttles." The other smirked. "Let him. Some people need to feel important." Elijah heard it. He did not answer. He ran his thumb along a seam instead, slow and deliberate, feeling for what the eyes might miss. A thin drop gathered on the edge of his glove. Not rain. Rain spread. This clung. He lifted it toward the light. Pale pink. Almost nothing. The kind of nothing that killed people when men were too proud to stop moving. Before he could reach for a clean rag, the hangar doors groaned open. Wind rushed in first, sharp with wet asphalt and jet fuel. Then came the headlights. 3 black SUVs rolled into the hangar, glossy and silent, flanked by security men in dark coats. The laughter near the coffee station died. Derek Sloan stepped out from the operations office with his tablet already in hand, suddenly standing taller than he had all night. Elijah slid out from under the jet and rose to his feet, still holding the glove under the flashlight. The rear door of the lead SUV opened. A white woman stepped onto the wet concrete in a tailored ivory coat, her blonde hair pinned back, her face composed in the hard way of someone who had learned never to look surprised. Claire Whitmore did not walk fast. She made everyone else feel late. A legal aide hurried beside her, whispering about Denver, board votes, and a signature window closing before dawn. Claire's eyes moved across the hangar, over the crew, over the aircraft, then stopped on Elijah's oil-stained sleeves. Not disgust. Not warmth. Assessment. A person measuring an obstacle. Derek reached her before Elijah could speak. Ms. Whitmore, the jet is ready. Minor weather, nothing material. Elijah looked at the small pink shine on his glove, then at the forward landing gear. One of the crewmen shook his head slightly, a warning. Don't do it. Not tonight. Elijah stepped forward anyway. It's not ready, he said. The hangar went still. Derek's smile tightened. Brooks. Claire turned fully toward him. For the first time, the billionaire and the night mechanic stood in the same line of light. Her coat was spotless. His boots were wet. Behind him, his phone buzzed again on the toolbox, lighting up beside the paper airplane. Claire saw the phone. Saw the childlike fold of paper. Saw the glove in his hand. Her expression did not soften. It sharpened. Is there a problem, she asked, or are you making one? Elijah did not look away. Ma'am, I don't make problems. I find them before they fly. Derek gave a short laugh, too loud for the room. He's being cautious. Overly cautious. Claire's gaze stayed on Elijah. The wind pushed rain across the concrete, and a thin pink drop slipped from his glove onto the floor between them. Claire looked down. So did Elijah. Then, from the toolbox, his phone buzzed again, Tanya's name glowing beside Noah's paper jet. Elijah did not reach for the phone. Not at first. The screen kept glowing against the steel edge of his toolbox, Tanya's name pulsing beside the crooked paper airplane, but the whole hangar had turned its attention toward him. Men in pressed coats. Pilots with clean cuffs. Security with hands folded in front of them. Claire Whitmore, standing dry beneath the wide black umbrella someone held over her shoulder, watched the drop on the floor spread into a faint pink crescent. Derek Sloan stepped between them before silence could become evidence. This is exactly what I warned you about, he said, his voice low but meant for everyone. Brooks gets nervous around executive departures. He overchecks, delays, writes up ghosts. It's a pattern. One of the junior crewmen looked away. Another lifted his phone halfway, not filming openly, just enough. Elijah saw it. He saw the angle too. A black mechanic in wet boots blocking a billionaire's jet. A white woman in an ivory coat being told no. A floor marked with something only he had noticed. The world knew how to crop a story like that. His jaw tightened once. Then released. I need 10 minutes with the forward gear, he said. Derek laughed through his nose. You need to answer your phone and leave this to certified flight operations. I am certified for ground safety on this aircraft. You are night maintenance. The words landed clean and hard. Not loud. Worse than loud. Clean enough for people to pretend they were professional. Claire did not interrupt. Her face stayed unreadable, but her eyes moved from Derek to Elijah, then to the phone still buzzing. She heard the title. Night maintenance. She also heard what Derek wanted her to hear, not important, not reliable, replaceable. Elijah finally picked up the phone. He turned slightly, not hiding, just giving his son's fear a little privacy. Tanya. Her voice was thin with concern. Noah's breathing had tightened. She had used the rescue inhaler. It helped, but not enough. I can call transport if you want, she said. Elijah looked at the jet. At the glove. At Claire. At Derek already opening an incident form on his tablet. There were choices that looked simple only to people who had never had to pay for the consequences. Give him 2 minutes, Elijah said quietly. Tell him I'm coming as soon as I can leave something safe. Behind him, Derek muttered, unbelievable. Elijah ended the call and slid the phone into his pocket, though his fingers lingered for half a breath. The paper airplane had dampened at one corner. He picked it up and placed it inside the top tray of his toolbox, away from the rain. A small act. Almost nothing. Claire noticed it anyway. Mr. Brooks, she said, using his name because it was stitched where she could see it, are you refusing to clear this aircraft? I'm refusing to lie about it. The hangar went colder than the rain. Derek's face hardened. That's insubordination. No, Elijah said. That's my signature. He did not raise his voice. He did not step closer. He just stood there with his wet sleeves, his tired eyes, and the kind of calm that made angry men look smaller. If you have ever been judged before anyone asked the right question, or had to stay calm because someone smaller was counting on you, leave a comment below. And stay with this story, because what happens next is where the truth starts getting expensive. Claire's aide, Vanessa Crane, leaned close and whispered something about the board window, Denver airspace, and losing control of the vote by sunrise. Claire's attention flickered. Not away from Elijah completely. Just back to the world that owned her. Deadlines. Signatures. Men in suits waiting for her to fail. Derek, she said, what does protocol allow? Derek did not hesitate. Override ground objection with supervisory review. I can sign off. We document Brooks as non-compliant, remove him from the hangar, and proceed. Remove him. The word struck Elijah harder than the job title had. Removal meant write-up. Write-up meant suspension. Suspension meant benefits review. Benefits review meant Noah's inhaler becoming a number on a form. Still, he only nodded once, as if the cost had been expected. Then document this too, he said. Forward gear shows possible hydraulic seep. Pink tint. Metallic odor. Directional trail against rainfall. Derek stepped closer, smiling without warmth. Careful. Put a false defect on a Whitmore aircraft tonight, and you won't work near a runway again. Claire heard that. Her eyes shifted. For the first time, something did not fit. If Elijah was bluffing for money, why wasn't he asking for any? If he wanted attention, why did he look like every second away from his phone was hurting him? She looked past Derek toward the toolbox. The paper airplane sat half hidden in the tray, one wing open under the harsh hangar light. Daddy checks things twice. Claire read only the first word before Derek snapped his tablet shut. Security, he called. Escort Mr. Brooks to operations. Elijah did not resist when 2 guards approached. He simply picked up his old flashlight, set it down beside the ensigned safety sheet, and looked once at the jet's forward wheel. Gravity doesn't care who owns the plane, he said. Then he walked with the guards. Behind him, Claire stayed still as rain tapped against the hangar doors, staring at the faint pink mark on the concrete while Derek quietly dragged the toe of his polished shoe through it. The hallway outside County Hospital's pediatric wing smelled like floor wax, vending machine coffee, and rain brought in on tired shoes. Elijah arrived with his work jacket still damp, his badge gone from his chest, and a folded suspension notice pressed flat in the inside pocket where he usually kept Noah's spare inhaler. He had driven there in his old blue pickup with the heater coughing warm air in short, stubborn bursts, one headlight dimmer than the other, the dashboard rattling every time the tires hit a pothole. On the passenger seat sat his toolbox. In the top tray, protected under a clean rag, was Noah's paper airplane. One wing had curled from the moisture, but the pencil letters were still there. Daddy checks things twice. Elijah had not looked at the words during the drive. He already knew what they said. At the nurse's station, Tanya Brooks stood with her arms folded around herself, her face soft with worry and irritation. She was too polite to aim at him. "He's stable," she said before he could ask. Elijah let out one breath. Not relief exactly. Relief was too big. This was a man setting down a weight for 3 seconds before picking it back up. "Thank you," he said. Tanya glanced at his empty name patch. "What happened at work?" Elijah looked past her through the glass, where Noah lay half awake on a narrow bed, a plastic mask resting near his cheek, his small backpack slumped in a chair beside him. A dinosaur keychain hung from the zipper, one leg snapped off weeks ago and repaired with black tape. "A plane wasn't ready," Elijah said. "So they sent me away." Tanya studied him. "That all?" "That's enough." He stepped into the room quietly. Noah turned his head before opening his eyes, as if he knew the sound of his father's boots even through hospital noise. "Daddy?" "Right here." Elijah took the chair beside the bed, not collapsing into it, just lowering himself with care, like even his exhaustion had manners. Noah's fingers searched out from under the blanket. Elijah gave him 2. The boy held them with surprising strength. "Did the plane get home?" Noah asked. Elijah looked at the monitor blinking beside the bed. Green light. Soft beep. Another machine doing its job because someone was watching. "Not yet." Noah frowned. "Why?" "Because sometimes getting home means waiting." The boy seemed to think about that. His eyelids drooped. "Did you get in trouble?" Elijah brushed one thumb over Noah's knuckles. There was no good answer that would not put adult fear into a child's chest. "I told the truth in a room that was in a hurry." Noah's small mouth moved like he almost smiled. "Mom said you do that." The words changed the air. Elijah's hand went still. Noah rarely mentioned his mother at night. Not since the funeral had turned certain memories into glass. Elijah swallowed once, the motion small and private. "She did," he said. "And she was usually right." Noah drifted back toward sleep, his breathing shallow but even. Elijah sat beside him while the city hummed beyond the hospital window. Sirens far away. Tires hissing on wet streets. Somewhere downstairs, an elevator bell chimed again and again like a tired question. He pulled the suspension notice from his pocket and unfolded it under the low blue light. Pending review. Conduct interference. Unauthorized delay of executive aircraft. Possible benefits hold. The words were clean, official, and merciless. He folded the paper once. Then again. He did not tear it. Anger wanted drama. Responsibility wanted order. On the rolling table near Noah's bed sat a paper cup of black coffee that Tanya must have left for him. Cold now. He drank it anyway. Across town, in the private operations suite at Whitmore Field, Claire Whitmore stood before a wall of security monitors with her ivory coat still buttoned and her flight still grounded. Vanessa Crane hovered behind her with a tablet full of board messages Claire had stopped answering. Derek Sloan was speaking from the doorway, calm, polished, explaining liability and employee instability and how men under financial stress sometimes created leverage where none existed. Claire listened without looking at him. Her eyes stayed on the paused footage. Elijah stepping forward. Elijah not touching her. Elijah not asking for money. Elijah turning away to answer the phone with his shoulders held too still. On another screen, from a side camera near the fueling cart, something moved before the confrontation. A figure near the forward landing gear. Too far to identify. Too quick to accuse. But there. Claire leaned closer. "Rewind that," she said. Vanessa blinked. "The employee footage?" "No." Before him. The clip jumped back. Rain flickered in gray bands. The hangar lights washed everything pale. Claire watched the shadow pass near the nose gear, then disappear behind the jet's wheel assembly. Her expression did not soften. It narrowed. At the hospital, Elijah reached into his toolbox for a small screwdriver to fix the loose wheel on Noah's toy ambulance, something the boy had been worried about all week. The paper airplane shifted with the motion, sliding out from under the rag and landing on top of the suspension notice. Elijah looked down. On the curled wing, beside Noah's crooked letters, a faint pink smear had dried into the paper fibers. Not rain. Not coffee. He touched it with the edge of his thumb, then went very still. His phone buzzed on the bedside table. Unknown number. He let it ring twice so Noah would not wake. Then he answered in a whisper. A woman's controlled voice came through the line. "Mr. Brooks, this is Vanessa Crane from Ms. Whitmore's office. She needs you to return to the airfield immediately." The hospital doors opened to the same rain, but Elijah stepped through them differently this time. Noah was sleeping. Tanya had promised to stay until morning. The paper airplane was folded inside Elijah's jacket pocket now, tucked beside the suspension notice like two versions of the same night. One made by a child who trusted him. One made by adults who did not. His old pickup started on the third turn. The engine coughed, shook, then settled into a tired growl. Elijah sat behind the wheel for a second with both hands resting at 10 and 2, looking through the windshield at the wet streetlights. A man could be called back for many reasons. To be heard. To be blamed. To be used. He did not know which one waited at the airfield. He only knew a jet was still sitting under a roof with a question beneath its nose, and his name was already attached to that question. By the time he returned to Whitmore Field, the hangar looked less like a workplace and more like a courtroom. Security had doubled near the doors. The pilots stood apart, speaking in low voices. Derek Sloan waited by the operations desk with his arms folded, his face arranged into patience for the benefit of people who mattered. Claire Whitmore stood near the glass wall of the private lounge, no umbrella now, no movement wasted. Behind her, Vanessa Crane held a tablet against her chest like it was evidence she was not ready to show. Everyone looked at Elijah when he entered. Some with irritation. Some with curiosity. Most with the expression people wear when a lower-ranking man has been summoned back into a room above his station. Elijah wiped his boots on the mat before stepping onto the polished floor. Not because they deserved his carefulness. Because he did. "Mr. Brooks," Claire said. Her voice was controlled, but not as sharp as before. "You said the aircraft was unsafe." Elijah looked once at Derek, then back at her. "I said it wasn't ready." Derek gave a small scoff. "That distinction doesn't help your case." Elijah did not answer him. Claire noticed that. He did not chase the insult. He did not defend his pride where his work could speak. She gestured toward the frozen image on the monitor. The side camera footage showed a blurred figure near the forward landing gear before Elijah's inspection. "Can you identify this person?" she asked. Elijah stepped closer, keeping distance from her desk as if invisible lines mattered. On the screen, rain cut across the image. A shoulder. A cap. A hand near the access panel. Not enough. "No, ma'am." Derek spread his hands. "There. He can't identify anything. We're wasting time." Claire's eyes stayed on Elijah. "But you saw something after this." "Yes." "Show me." The room shifted. Derek's face tightened. "Ms. Whitmore, he has been suspended pending review. He shouldn't be touching company equipment." "Then he can point," Claire said. It was not protection. Not trust. Just permission. Thin as paper. Elijah accepted it like a man accepting a tool, not a favor. He walked back toward the jet with the small group following him, their footsteps echoing across the hangar floor. The aircraft towered above them, white and immaculate, a rich woman's urgency shaped into metal. Elijah crouched beside the forward gear without hurry. His knees cracked softly. His fingers hovered, not touching yet. Rainwater runs down, he said. It follows gravity, then spreads when it hits the floor. He angled his flashlight beneath the assembly. This line ran sideways first. Claire lowered herself slightly, just enough to see where the beam landed, careful not to let her coat touch the ground. Derek stayed standing. Hydraulic residue can travel with wind, he said. Elijah nodded once. It can. The answer surprised Claire. He did not fight every word. He gave truth room, even when truth did not flatter him. Then Elijah reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the paper airplane. For one brief second, the hangar forgot to breathe. The object looked absurd under those lights. A child's folded scrap beside a billionaire's jet. He unfolded one wing just enough to show the dried pink smear. This was in my toolbox before anyone cleaned the floor. His voice stayed low. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you not to ignore evidence because of who found it. Claire looked at the paper. Then at his hands. There was grease beneath his nails, a hospital visitor sticker still clinging to his sleeve, and a steadiness she had not paid for and could not command. Vanessa's expression changed first. Derek saw it and stepped in. A contaminated child's toy is not evidence. Elijah folded the plane back carefully. It's not a toy to me. The words were quiet. A boundary, not an explanation. Claire's gaze lingered on him a little longer than she meant to. Something in the room had turned. Not enough for trust. Enough for doubt. Then a sudden noise cut through the hangar, a small metallic click from the forward gear housing, followed by one fresh drop of pink fluid falling cleanly onto the concrete where Derek had dragged his shoe through the last one. The fresh drop hit the concrete with a sound too small for the size of the room, but everyone heard it. Not with their ears. With their pride. Claire Whitmore stared at the pink bead spreading beneath the nose gear, her phone still vibrating in Vanessa's hand with board members waiting on the other side of Dawn. Derek moved first. That could be residual, he said quickly. Pressure bleed from an earlier service. It happens. Elijah did not look at him. He kept his eyes on the landing assembly, on the clean line of fluid forming where no rain could reach. Then it'll still be residual after we tag it out, he said. Derek's jaw flexed. You don't tag out a Whitmore aircraft. Elijah stood slowly. I tag out unsafe equipment. The words were plain. Not brave for show. Not sharpened for applause. Just a man putting a rule where temptation wanted a shortcut. One of the pilots crossed his arms. A security guard shifted his weight. The junior crewman who had laughed earlier stopped recording, or pretended to. Claire watched Elijah fold the paper airplane back into his pocket with the same care he gave the jet, and something about that small motion worked under her skin. He had been summoned, accused, threatened, and still he protected a child's folded paper from the rain like it mattered. In Claire's world, important things came with insurance, signatures, valuations, and locked glass cases. Elijah treated a creased scrap like it held weight. Then, from the far side of the hangar, a sharp clatter broke the silence. A catering cart had tipped near the service entrance, spilling sealed meal trays across the floor. The young woman pushing it froze, one hand over her mouth, her uniform sleeve soaked with coffee. She couldn't have been more than 20. Maybe new. Maybe scared. A silver thermos rolled toward the jet, rattling until it struck Elijah's boot. The supervisor near the lounge snapped, "Are you kidding me? Do you know whose aircraft that's for?" The girl bent too fast, gathering trays with trembling hands. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry." The wheel stuck. Derek turned on her like he had been waiting for a smaller target. "Get that mess out before Ms. Whitmore slips on it." And pray nothing touched the aircraft. Claire did not speak. She was used to messes disappearing before they reached her shoes. But Elijah moved. Not dramatically. Not toward Claire. Toward the girl. He crouched, picked up the trays that had slid under the cart, and set them upright on the lower shelf. "Wheels bent," he said, glancing at the caster. "Don't push it loaded." The girl blinked at him. "I'm not allowed to leave it." "You're allowed not to get hurt." He took the stained towel from his own belt, wiped the coffee from the floor before anyone could step through it, then used a small wrench from his pocket to loosen the jammed caster. It cost him maybe 2 minutes. It cost him more than that. Derek saw an opening. "Mr. Brooks, unless you now work catering too, step away." Elijah kept his head down, tightening the bolt just enough to free the wheel. "Floor's wet. People fall. That is not your concern." Elijah looked up then. Calm. Tired. Unmoved. "If I can reach it, it's my concern." The catering girl stared at him like no one had ever put her safety in the same sentence as a billionaire's schedule. Claire looked down at her own shoes, still dry, still spotless because other people had spent the night keeping the world from touching them. Elijah tested the cart once, then pushed it back to the girl. "Slow on the left side," he told her. "It'll pull." She nodded, whispering thanks. He did not accept it like payment. He simply stepped back to the aircraft, where the pink drop had become a second, then a third. The hangar was watching him differently now, though no one wanted to admit it. Not as a hero. That would have been too easy. More like a man they had failed to measure correctly. Claire's phone buzzed again. Denver. Board vote. Control slipping minute by minute. She should have answered. Instead, she lowered the phone to her side. 1 second. Then 2. Vanessa noticed. So did Derek. "Ms. Whitmore," he warned softly, "sentiment is not procedure." Claire's eyes stayed on Elijah, who was cleaning his wrench with the same stained towel he had used on the floor. A towel he would probably have to replace himself. "No," she said, still watching him. "But character usually shows up before procedure catches it." Derek's expression chilled. Elijah seemed not to hear. He was looking at his phone now, at a message that had lit the screen for only a moment before going dark again. "Tanya, Noah woke up asking if you're coming back." His hand closed around the phone, not tight enough to show anger, just enough to keep from answering too soon. Claire saw the message's first line reflected faintly in the black glass of the lounge wall. Saw the name Noah. Saw Elijah place the phone face down rather than let the room use his son against him. That silence stayed with her. Then Vanessa, who had been reviewing the side camera footage frame by frame, suddenly stopped swiping. Her face changed. "Claire," she said quietly. "You need to see what Derek did after the first drop." The private lounge above Hangar 3 was built to make urgency look elegant. Glass walls. Dark leather chairs. A table long enough for 12 people who would never carry their own bags. Beyond the window, the grounded jet sat under white lights with its nose pointed toward a runway it was not allowed to touch. Claire Whitmore stood alone in the reflection of the glass, her phone vibrating against the table every few seconds. Denver. Board council. Her uncle's office. A director who had smiled at her father's funeral and started buying votes before the flowers had wilted. She let the calls stack up unanswered. On the monitor, Vanessa had frozen the security footage at the exact second Derek's polished shoe dragged through the first pink mark on the concrete. Not a mistake. Not proof either. Just a motion too deliberate to be innocent. Claire watched it 3 times without changing expression. The 4th time, she noticed Elijah in the edge of the frame. Not looking at Derek. Not watching her. Bending beside the catering girl with a wrench in his hand, fixing a will no one had ordered him to fix. A small thing. An inconvenient thing. A thing that earned him nothing. Claire reached for her coffee, then remembered it had gone cold an hour ago. Her reflection stared back from the glass, perfect and pale and tired. Her father used to say trust was an expense people hid inside kindness. Raymond Whitmore had built a company on that suspicion. Then left his daughter the keys to it with a letter that began, "Do not let them see what hurts you." She had obeyed him better than he deserved. A knock came. Vanessa entered without waiting, tablet tucked under one arm. "The board wants you on in 6 minutes." Claire did not turn. "They can wait." Vanessa's eyebrows lifted slightly. "They may not." The phone buzzed again, skittering half an inch across the table. Claire picked it up, looked at the name, and set it face down. "Derek says Brooks has financial pressure," Vanessa said carefully. "Late rent. Child medical expenses. Prior warning for extended inspections. He thinks that gives motive." Claire watched the frozen image of Elijah's hand on the cartwheel. Motive to do what? Create leverage. He didn't ask for leverage. Vanessa did not answer. That silence had weight. Claire hated that weight because it asked her to admit what she had already seen. Men who wanted money usually circled it. Elijah had walked around it like it was a spill on the floor. Claire moved to the table and opened the personnel file Vanessa had pulled. Elijah Brooks. Ground maintenance technician. Night shift. Emergency contact, Noah Brooks. Dependent coverage active. Status, pending review. She stopped on the dependent line longer than she meant to. Noah. The name had been on his phone. The message reflected in the glass. A child asking whether his father was coming back. Claire closed the file, then opened it again. "How old is his son?" she asked. Vanessa looked at her. A small question. Too personal for a corporate emergency. 8. Claire nodded once, as if the number belonged to a spreadsheet. It did not. 8 was little enough to believe paper airplanes could carry promises. On the monitor, the camera angle shifted as Vanessa scrubbed backward. For half a second, Elijah's toolbox came into view. The paper airplane rested in the top tray, one wing marked by crooked pencil letters Claire could not fully read. She leaned closer before she could stop herself. Vanessa noticed but said nothing. "Zoom in," Claire said. The image blurred. The words were incomplete. "Daddy checks," then static grain swallowed the rest. Claire's jaw tightened. A memory moved behind her eyes before she could lock it away. She was 9, standing barefoot in her father's hangar, holding a paper glider he had folded from a contract draft. He had laughed then. Once. Before the company ate the softer parts of him. Before every room became a negotiation. Before Claire learned that affection could be scheduled, measured, and withdrawn. Her phone buzzed again. This time she answered. "I'm not signing on to the board call yet." A man's voice snapped through the speaker, smooth with threat. Her uncle. "Claire, sentiment over a mechanic will cost you the company." Her eyes stayed on the frozen paper airplane. Then the company was already too expensive. The line went quiet. Vanessa's face changed, just barely. Claire ended the call before the silence could become fear. Downstairs, Elijah stood beside the jet with 2 guards still close enough to remind him he had been invited back without being welcomed. His phone was in his palm. A text from Tanya said Noah had fallen asleep again, but the hospital wanted to keep him overnight. Elijah typed 3 different replies and deleted them all. Finally, he wrote, "Tell him I'm finishing what I promised." He stared at the words, then sent them. In the lounge above, Claire read the next line in Elijah's file. Previous employer, Municipal Aviation Maintenance. Commendation notation sealed. Her finger stopped. "Why is this section locked?" she asked. Vanessa looked over. Old city record. We'd need authorization to pull it. Claire glanced back at the monitor. Elijah had his head slightly bowed, not defeated, just tired. The kind of tired money never had to explain. Claire picked up the tablet and handed it to Vanessa. Get the authorization. Vanessa hesitated. For the aircraft issue? Claire looked through the glass at the man below, then at the paper airplane frozen on the screen. For the question I should have asked before I judged him. Claire did not go to the hospital to be kind. That was what she told herself while the black company sedan moved through wet city streets, past closed diners, blinking traffic lights, and apartment windows glowing like tired eyes. Vanessa sat beside her with the tablet on her lap, the locked city record still pending, the board still calling, Derek still texting warnings that looked more like instructions than concern. Claire ignored all of it until the driver stopped beneath the blue-white lights of County Hospital. This is unnecessary, Vanessa said softly, not accusing her, just naming the risk. Claire looked through the rain-streaked glass at the entrance where people without private doctors waited under a leaking awning. So was judging him before I knew what he was protecting. She stepped out before Vanessa could answer. Upstairs, the pediatric wing was quiet in the exhausted way only hospitals could be after midnight. Machines breathed. Fluorescent lights hummed. A janitor moved a mop slowly near the elevators, and Claire noticed him because Elijah had taught her, without meaning to, that people on night shifts held worlds together while the day pretended not to need them. Noah's room door was half open. Claire stopped before entering. Through the narrow gap, she saw Elijah sitting beside the bed, his broad shoulders curved forward, one hand resting near Noah's blanket but not on it, as if even love could be gentle enough not to wake a child. His toolbox sat under the chair. His old jacket hung over the back. The paper airplane lay on the bedside table beside a medicine cup and a small plastic dinosaur with black tape on one leg. Noah was awake, barely. His eyes found the doorway first. "Are you the plane lady?" he asked. Elijah turned at once. Not startled. Alert. His face closed just enough to protect the room. "Noah," he said quietly. "It's all right," Claire said, though she was not sure who she was telling. She stepped inside, careful, feeling strangely overdressed in a place where everything important was measured in breaths. Noah studied her coat, her shoes, the phone in her hand. Children did not respect status the way adults did. They looked for simpler evidence. "Did my daddy stop your plane?" he asked. Claire glanced at Elijah. He did not help her. He did not make the question easier. "Yes," she said. Noah nodded, satisfied, then reached for the paper airplane. His fingers were clumsy from the monitor clip. Elijah leaned forward but stopped before doing it for him. Noah got it himself and held it out toward Claire. "He checks things twice because one time a bus almost left without me." Claire took the paper because refusing felt rude in a way no boardroom had prepared her for. The wing was soft from wear. The pink smear had dried darker near the crease. "Daddy checks things twice." Under that, in smaller letters she had not seen on the camera, Noah had written, "So people don't get lost." Something moved behind Claire's ribs. Not pain. Not yet. Recognition, maybe. The kind that arrived before permission. Her father's old paper glider came back to her in pieces, his hands folding contract paper, his laugh before suspicion became his native language, the last time she believed wealth made people safer. Elijah's voice brought her back. "Ms. Whitmore, my son doesn't need to be part of this." No anger. A boundary. Clear as a line painted on a runway. Claire folded the plane carefully along its old crease and gave it back to Noah. "You're right," she said to Elijah. Then to the boy, softer but still controlled, "Your father was doing his job." Noah looked at her, then at Elijah. "He always does." The words were small. They filled the room anyway. Vanessa appeared at the door, phone pressed to her ear, her expression tight. Claire, she whispered, Derek just filed a formal incident report. He says Mr. Brooks brought you here to influence the investigation. Elijah stood immediately, not for himself but because the room had changed around his child. I didn't ask her to come. Vanessa lowered the phone. Claire's face went still, the old armor sliding back into place, but her eyes stayed on the paper airplane in Noah's hand. On its damp edge, beneath the dried pink smear, a faint stamped number from the original inspection sheet showed through, WB-17. Vanessa looked down at the tablet, then froze. Claire, she said, almost too quietly. That's the same service code Derek claimed was cleared this afternoon. By morning, the story had learned to travel without him. It moved through Whitmore Field in clipped whispers and half-lit phone screens, passed from crew lockers to the pilot's lounge, from security desks to the private elevator where men in suits lowered their voices but not their judgment. A short internal video showed Elijah standing beside Claire in Noah's hospital room, his work jacket damp, his toolbox on the floor, his son awake in bed. It did not show Claire arriving uninvited. It did not show Noah handing her the paper airplane. It did not show the service code stamped through the wing. The caption was worse than the footage, suspended mechanic pressure CEO at child's bedside. Elijah saw it on Tanya's phone before she could turn the screen away. Noah was brushing his teeth at the small hospital sink, one hand gripping the edge, his hospital bracelet sliding down his thin wrist. Elijah watched the clip once. No sound. Just his own face frozen in a room where his son had been trying to breathe. Tanya's eyes filled with anger on his behalf. This isn't what happened. Elijah handed the phone back. No, you should say something. He looked toward Noah, who was pretending not to listen. 8 years old and already learning how adults could bend a picture until it cut. Not in front of him. Tanya lowered her voice. Elijah, they're making you look like, I know what they're making. His tone stayed even, but something quiet hardened beneath it. I also know who's watching me. Noah came back to the bed, toothpaste at one corner of his mouth, the paper airplane held carefully against his chest. Are people mad because I talked to the plane lady? Elijah crouched and wiped the toothpaste away with his thumb. People get loud when they don't have the whole truth. Do we tell them? Elijah looked at the folded paper in Noah's hand. At the pink smear. At the stamped WB-17 bleeding faintly through the crease. We tell the truth to the right people, he said. We don't throw it at the wrong ones. Across town, Claire stood in her glass office at the airfield, the same video open on 3 screens. One sent by Derek. One forwarded by a board director. One already attached to a draft disciplinary memo Vanessa had refused to finalize without Claire's approval. The room smelled of cold coffee and expensive wood polish. Below the window, the jet still sat grounded, white and silent, while mechanics moved around it with the tense efficiency of people afraid to be seen choosing sides. Derek stood near the conference table, not smug enough to be caught, not humble enough to be believed. The optics are dangerous, he said. You visit a suspended employee at a hospital, his child hands you a so-called object connected to the aircraft, and suddenly he has influence over an executive safety decision. The board will see liability. Claire watched the clip again. Elijah stepping up between his son's bed and the doorway after Vanessa mentioned the report. Not aggressive. Protective. There was a difference. A difference the camera angle erased. Who circulated this? She asked. Derek glanced at Vanessa. Internal security flagged it. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Security doesn't caption footage. Claire looked at Derek then. Long enough for him to adjust his cuff. And the full hallway camera, she asked. Corrupted, he said. Too quickly. Convenient, Vanessa murmured. Claire did not smile. Her phone buzzed. A board director demanded Elijah's immediate ban from all Whitmore properties. Another message warned that if she delayed departure again, the Denver vote would proceed without her. Power had a sound, Claire realized. It was not thunder. It was vibration on glass. She picked up the disciplinary memo. Elijah Brooks, access revoked, benefits under review, pending investigation. Her pen hovered above the signature line. Derek watched the pen. Vanessa watched Claire. On the screen, the paused footage caught Elijah's face in profile, tired and still, as Noah's small hand clutched the paper airplane beside him. Claire remembered the boy's words. He always does. She set the pen down. I want the unedited footage. Derek's mouth thinned. You may not have time for sentiment. Claire's voice dropped. Then stop selling me fear and bring me facts. It was not a defense of Elijah. Not yet. It was a refusal to be hurried into cruelty. That alone changed the room. At the hospital, a security officer from Whitmore Field arrived with an envelope and a polite expression that made the damage feel official. Elijah signed the receipt without argument. Temporary property restriction. Badge disabled. Medical coverage pending employment review. He folded the notice once, then slid it into his jacket beside Noah's discharge papers. Noah watched him from the bed, the paper airplane now resting on his lap like a small wounded bird. Can you still fix the plane? He asked. Elijah looked at his son, then through the window at the pale morning sky. I can still tell the truth about it. Down in the parking lot, as Elijah carried the toolbox toward his old truck, he noticed the top tray was lighter. He stopped. The clean rag was there. The suspension notice was there. The small screwdriver was there. But the paper airplane was gone. Upstairs at Whitmore Field, Vanessa stepped into Claire's office holding a sealed evidence sleeve. Inside it lay Noah's folded plane, taken from the hospital room by Whitmore Security and tagged as company-related material. Claire stared at the child's handwriting through the plastic. Then Vanessa said, very quietly, the person who logged it wasn't hospital security. It was Derek. Elijah stood beside the old blue pickup with his hand resting on the empty top tray of his toolbox. The hospital parking lot was waking up around him. Nurses changed shifts under a gray sky. A delivery truck hissed at the curb. Somewhere behind the glass doors, Noah was being cleared for discharge with a plastic bag of medicine, a tired smile, and no idea his paper airplane had just been taken from the room like evidence in a crime. Elijah did not storm back inside. He did not call security a thief. He simply closed the toolbox, set it in the bed of the truck, and looked at the wet pavement for one long second. His phone buzzed. Tanya. They're asking when you can take Noah home, she said. And the pharmacy says the refill isn't covered yet. Elijah's eyes moved to the envelope in his jacket. Medical coverage pending employment review. The words had become heavier since he first read them. How much? He asked. Tanya hesitated. That told him enough. He reached into his wallet and counted what was left, 2 20s, a 10, 3 singles, and a gas station receipt folded around a coupon for coffee. Noah needed new school shoes by Friday. Rent needed a miracle by Monday. His truck needed gas before noon. Elijah put the money back neatly. Order did not solve hunger. But disorder made shame louder. Tell them I'll handle it, he said. Elijah, I'll handle it. He ended the call gently, then saw the message from Vanessa Crane. Mr. Brooks, Ms. Whitmore requests that you return to the airfield to clarify the service code on the paper aircraft. Claire's name was not on the message, but it sat behind every word. Power asking through a polished hallway. Noah asking through a hospital mask. The right thing stood between them, quiet and expensive. Elijah looked toward the pediatric entrance. Through the glass, he could see Noah in the wheelchair, small backpack on his lap, dinosaur keychain swinging from the zipper. The boy lifted one hand. Elijah lifted his back. Then he turned toward the driver's seat. The decision was not dramatic. That was the cruel part. Sacrifice often looked like a father being late again. Back at Whitmore Field, the security gate would not open for his disabled badge. Elijah parked outside the fence and walked through the rain to the guard booth with his toolbox in one hand and his old jacket pulled tight at the collar. The guard on duty was younger than him, embarrassed to be enforcing a rule he had not written. "Mr. Brooks, I can't let you in." Elijah nodded. "Then call someone who can meet me out here. They said you're restricted from company property." "I'm not here for the property." He set the toolbox down under the narrow awning. "I'm here for the plane." The guard looked away first. 20 minutes later, Vanessa arrived with 2 security officers and a temporary access form clipped to a board. Derek was not with her. That worried Elijah more than if he had been. "They need you to sign this before speaking with Ms. Whitmore," Vanessa said. Her voice was professional, but her eyes were tired. Elijah read the form line by line. Voluntary statement. No admission of company liability. No claim of retaliation. Agreement not to disclose internal safety matters. He reached the bottom and stopped. Rainwater dripped from his jacket onto the concrete. "This says I can't tell the FAA if that aircraft is unsafe." Vanessa's mouth tightened. "It says you agree to internal channels first." "That's not what it says." One security officer shifted impatiently. "Sir, just sign it if you want to help yourself." Elijah looked at him, not unkindly. "I'm not here to help myself." He placed the clipboard back in Vanessa's hands without signing. "A signature can feed my son for a week. A bad one can bury somebody else's." The guard booth went quiet. Vanessa lowered the clipboard slowly, and for the first time, she looked less like an attorney and more like a witness. Inside the glass-walled operations office, Claire watched the live security feed with the sound turned up. She heard every word. She saw the old jacket. The toolbox. The empty space where the paper airplane should have been. She also saw Elijah's phone light up again and again in his palm. He did not answer until Vanessa stepped aside. "Hey, champ," he said, turning away from the cameras as much as the fence allowed. Noah's voice came through small and scratchy. "Are you coming now?" Elijah closed his eyes. Rain touched his eyelashes. "Soon as I can. They took my plane." Elijah opened his eyes again. Claire, behind the monitor, went still. "I know," he said. "I'm going to bring it back." "Did I do something wrong?" The question was soft enough to break something larger than glass. Elijah's shoulders squared, not against the world, but for his son. "No, sir. Grown folks just forgot it belonged to a child." Claire looked down at the evidence sleeve on her desk. Noah's airplane lay inside it, flattened under plastic, the words "Daddy checks things twice" pressed beside the dried pink smear and the stamped WB-17. For the first time, the object did not look like evidence. It looked confiscated. Vanessa entered the office minutes later, carrying the unsigned form. "He refused," she said. Derek's voice came from the doorway behind her. "Then we're done with him." Claire did not answer. She picked up the evidence sleeve, studied the service code again, and saw a small tear along the crease where the original inspection sheet had been folded. Beneath it, half hidden by the smear, was a printed technician notation: "Pressure fluctuation observed, repeat test required." Her breath slowed. Derek stopped talking. Claire looked up from the child's paper airplane and finally understood that helping Elijah with money would be easy. Respecting him would cost her more. Claire did not move when Derek reached for the evidence sleeve. That was the first thing Vanessa noticed. In most rooms, people moved around Claire Whitmore because her stillness meant permission had been withdrawn. Derek's hand stopped halfway across the desk, fingers hovering above Noah's paper airplane like it belonged to the company because a plastic label said so. "That's internal material," he said. Claire looked at him. Not angry. Worse. Awake. It's a child's drawing folded from an inspection sheet. Derek's smile came thin. A sheet that should never have left controlled circulation. Then why was it in Brooks's toolbox before tonight? The question settled over the glass office. Outside, the grounded jet waited under floodlights. Below, beyond the security fence, Elijah stood in the rain beside the guard booth, his old toolbox at his feet, his phone pressed to his ear. He had turned his back to the cameras again, giving his son the only privacy he could afford. Claire watched him through the monitor while Vanessa ran the service code. WB-17. The scanner hummed softly. Paper slid. Digital records loaded in blue light. A file appeared, then stalled behind a password wall. Vanessa frowned. Service item WB-17 was opened this afternoon. Forward landing assembly pressure irregularity. Repeat test required. Claire's eyes moved to Derek. You said it was cleared. It was. By whom? Derek's jaw worked once. By operations. That isn't a name. The office phone rang. Then Claire's cell. Then Vanessa's. Denver was calling again, dragging the company back into the room like a debt collector. Claire ignored all three. On the screen, Elijah lowered his phone and wiped rain from his brow with the heel of his hand. Not dramatic. Not defeated. Just a tired father trying not to let the night take more from him than it already had. Claire turned back to the file. Pull his old city record. Vanessa hesitated. It's still locked. Use my authorization. Derek stepped forward. Claire, this is no longer about safety. You are allowing a suspended employee to redirect an executive crisis. Her gaze did not leave the monitor. No, Derek. I'm allowing the facts to become inconvenient. The record opened with a delay, as if the system itself disliked old truth. Municipal Aviation Maintenance. 5 years. Commendation sealed. Incident review. Partial testimony missing. One document loaded without its final page. Vanessa clicked through, slower now. There was a photo attached to the file, Elijah Younger, clean-shaven, wearing a city aviation jacket, standing beside a training aircraft with 2 other technicians. Claire leaned closer. His eyes were the same. Quieter now, but the same. Beside the photo was a notation: Brooks identified pressure failure during pre-departure inspection, preventing possible runway incident. A line beneath it had been redacted. Claire read the sentence twice. Possible runway incident. Her throat tightened, but her voice stayed level. He's done this before. Derek's response came too fast. A lot of people have inspection histories. Not like this. Downstairs, a security officer opened the gate just enough for Vanessa to wave Elijah inside. He did not hurry. He lifted his toolbox, crossed the wet pavement, and entered the operations lobby with rain on his shoulders and no badge on his chest. Claire came down to meet him herself. That choice moved through the staff faster than any rumor. Conversation stopped. A receptionist looked up. One pilot stepped aside. Derek followed behind Claire, polished and watchful. Elijah stood on the lobby floor, careful not to drip on the rug. The class difference was almost architectural: her glass, his work boots, her controlled air, his cold hands, her world built to move people like him out of frame. Claire held the evidence sleeve in both hands. WB-17, she said. What does that mean to you? Elijah looked at the plastic. At Noah's handwriting trapped beneath it. His face did not change much, but his eyes did. It means somebody was supposed to run the pressure test again. How do you know? He took a breath. A shallow one. Because the notation says so. The notation was half hidden. Not enough. Derek folded his arms. Convenient. Elijah finally looked at him. Not with hate. Not even accusation. Just recognition of a man trying to turn volume into truth. Convenient as clearing a jet before the test is done. The room went still. Claire saw Derek's neck flush above his collar. Small. Brief. There. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so the staff could not feed on it. Your old city file says you prevented an incident once. Elijah's gaze shifted away from her. Not guilt. Protection. A door closing. Old files don't fix tonight's plane. Why is the final page missing? I don't know. Why was your commendation sealed? He looked down at the toolbox handle in his hand. His knuckles were cracked from cold and labor. Ms. Whitmore, I came back because an aircraft may be unsafe. Not to sell you a story about me. The words landed gently, but they drew a line she could not cross with money or authority. Claire felt it. Respect, if it was real, had to stop pushing. Her phone buzzed again. This time Vanessa looked at the screen and went pale. Claire, she said. The board moved the vote up. 20 minutes. Derek's face flickered with relief before he hit it. Elijah saw it. So did Claire. On Vanessa's tablet, the old city file refreshed by itself as another page tried to load. A scanned signature appeared at the bottom of a maintenance dispute form. Not Elijah's. Not Derek's. A familiar name from Whitmore's past sat half visible under the loading bar, Raymond Whitmore. Claire's hand froze above the screen. Before the final page opened, Elijah's phone rang again. Tanya's name lit up, and this time he answered immediately, his face changing before anyone heard the words. Noah had taken a turn. The call changed Elijah before the room could. His shoulders, already carrying the night, went still in a way that made Claire stop watching the tablet and watch him. Tanya's voice was small through the phone, but the words reached him like weather. Noah's breathing had tightened again. The doctor wanted him monitored longer. They were asking for updated insurance information before processing the next medication. Elijah closed his eyes once. Not long enough to look broken. Just long enough to keep his fear from becoming public. I'm coming, he said. Tell him I'm coming now. Derek seized the moment with a smoothness that made it look like order. Then go. Family emergencies are exactly why Mr. Brooks should not be involved in a high-value executive safety matter. Vanessa looked up sharply. Claire said nothing. That was the mistake. Not because she agreed. Because silence, in a room like that, always signs something. Derek reached for the unsigned restriction form and placed it on the counter in front of Elijah. Before you leave, acknowledge receipt of your continued suspension and property restriction. Elijah looked at the paper. Then at the evidence sleeve in Claire's hand, where Noah's paper airplane lay flat and unreachable. The boy had asked for it. Elijah had promised to bring it back. Now the promise sat trapped between corporate plastic and a billionaire's hesitation. That belongs to my son, Elijah said. Derek's voice stayed polite. It is connected to an active investigation. Elijah nodded once, as if hearing the rule. Not accepting the theft inside it. He made it at breakfast. From company material. From paper I was going to throw away. Then it will be returned when appropriate. The lobby had gathered listeners. A receptionist behind the desk. 2 pilots near the hallway. Security at the door. People pretending to work because watching a man lose ground was easier when you could call it procedure. Claire felt their eyes on her. The board vote. Her father's half-loaded signature. Derek's warning. The smear on the paper wing. Noah's name. Everything pressed at once. She could have handed the airplane back. She could have told Derek to stop. Instead, afraid of choosing wrong in front of a system built to punish weakness, she held it a second too long. Elijah saw that second. He did not look angry. That was worse. Anger would have given her something to defend against. His calm left her alone with herself. "Ms. Whitmore," he said quietly, "don't let a child pay for grown people's fear." The sentence landed and stayed there. Claire's fingers tightened around the sleeve. Derek's face hardened. "Enough. Security, escort him out." Vanessa took half a step forward, then stopped when Claire did not move. The guards approached Elijah with practiced caution. He picked up his toolbox. Not fast. Not slow. He tucked the hospital discharge papers deeper into his jacket pocket, protecting them from the rain he had not yet walked back into. His phone buzzed again. Tanya. He did not answer in front of them. Some fears did not deserve an audience. One guard reached for his elbow. Elijah looked at the hand until the guard lowered it. "I can walk," he said. No threat. No plea. Just a line. He turned toward the exit, and the automatic glass doors opened to the gray morning outside. The rain had softened to a mist, thin enough to see through, cold enough to feel. Behind him, someone whispered that this would look bad if it leaked. Someone else said it already had. Elijah kept walking. He passed the grounded jet without looking up. The aircraft sat bright and expensive beneath the hangar lights, waiting for permission from people who had never had to choose between a paycheck and a promise to a sick child. At the gate, his badge failed again with a dull red blink. The guard had to open it manually. That tiny sound, metal sliding, felt more final than a slammed door. Claire watched from the lobby glass as Elijah crossed the wet pavement toward his truck, toolbox in one hand, phone in the other. Only when he reached the driver's side did he answer. She could not hear the words, but she saw his face change when he listened. Saw the father in him swallow the man's humiliation whole. Then the truck door opened, and he disappeared inside. Vanessa's tablet chimed behind her. The old city file had finished loading. "Claire," Vanessa said. Her voice was different now. Thinner. Claire turned, still holding the evidence sleeve. On the screen, the missing final page appeared in grainy black and white. Raymond Whitmore's signature sat at the bottom of a sealed commendation request. Below it, a handwritten note from her father read, "Brooks refused compensation. Said safety was not for sale." Claire's breath caught, but the page kept loading. A second attachment opened automatically, archived runway camera, dated 8 years earlier. The frame flickered. A younger Elijah stood under floodlights beside a city aircraft, pointing at a pressure leak no one else had believed. Beside him, in a dark overcoat, stood Raymond Whitmore, listening. Derek stepped into the room and saw the screen. For the first time all night, his confidence broke before his voice did. That file was supposed to stay sealed. Claire looked at him slowly. Outside, Elijah's old truck pulled away from the gate, carrying him back to his son without the paper airplane he had promised to return. Claire did not chase the truck. Not yet. She turned back to the screen because guilt was useless until it became evidence, and evidence was the only language the room could not pretend to misunderstand. The archived footage played in the glass office with no music, no mercy, just the cold blue glow of an old runway camera. A younger Elijah stood under rain-bright floodlights, one hand raised toward a city aircraft's landing assembly. Men around him looked impatient. Raymond Whitmore stood apart from them, listening with the rare stillness of someone who knew value when it arrived without a suit. Then the video cut to the maintenance report. Pressure failure confirmed. Departure cancelled. Incident avoided. Recommendation, formal commendation for Elijah Brooks. Claire read her father's handwritten note again. Brooks refused compensation. Said safety was not for sale. She set Noah's paper airplane beside the open file, and the two pieces of paper seemed to speak across 8 years. Same man. Same pressure. Same refusal to sell what other people kept pricing. Derek backed toward the door. Claire, you need to understand the context. Her voice came quiet. I do. Vanessa had pulled the current hangar footage onto the main monitor now. Not the cropped clip. The full feed. Derek's shoe dragging through the first pink drop. Derek ordering the side camera marked corrupted. Derek signing WB-17 as cleared hours before the repeat pressure test was ever completed. Then the fueling cart angle, a figure near the forward gear before Elijah's shift. The face was blurred by rain, but the access badge flash was clear enough. Sloan, D. The office went silent. Not shocked silent. Caught silent. Claire picked up the evidence sleeve, then stopped. Plastic still separated Noah's airplane from the hands it belonged to. She tore the seal open herself. Vanessa watched her, stunned. That's logged evidence. No, Claire said. It's a child's promise we had no right to take. 10 minutes later, the emergency board call filled the conference room wall. 12 faces appeared in clean rectangles, every one of them prepared to scold her for delay, liability, weakness, emotion. Derek sat at the far end of the table because he had nowhere else to go. Claire stood instead of sitting. Behind her, the full footage waited on the screen. Her phone vibrated with messages from Denver. She ignored them all. Before this company votes on my judgment, she said, you will see what my judgment almost failed to see. She played the full video without cutting away. No one spoke when Elijah bent to help the catering girl. No one spoke when Derek dragged his shoe through the fluid. No one spoke when the service code appeared on Noah's paper airplane, matched to the uncleared repeat test, then to the system log Derek had altered. When the clip ended, Claire placed Raymond Whitmore's old commendation note beneath the camera, where every director could read it. My father knew Elijah Brooks, she said. Her voice did not shake. That made it heavier. He trusted him for the same reason I punished him tonight. Because he would not let power hurry him past the truth. Derek finally stood. This is being framed unfairly. Claire turned to him. No. It was framed unfairly before. This is the frame removed. A board director warned that public exposure could damage Whitmore's image. Claire looked at the screen, then at the grounded jet beyond the glass. Then let the image crack before the aircraft does. The sentence cut through the room. She revoked Elijah's suspension on the call. Restored his benefits while everyone watched. Ordered an independent inspection of the jet and a formal safety review of Derek's sign-off chain. Not as charity. Not as a favor. As correction. Derek tried to object once more, but Vanessa placed the printed access log in front of him, and his words died into the polished table. Claire did not smile. There was no victory in almost being too late. At County Hospital, Elijah sat beside Noah's bed again, his old jacket folded over the chair, his toolbox on the floor by his boots. Noah was drowsy but breathing easier, one hand open on the blanket where the paper airplane should have been. The television mounted in the corner showed a muted news segment about airport delays, but Elijah was not watching it. He was watching his son's chest rise and fall. That was the only departure that mattered. The door opened softly. Claire stood there with Vanessa behind her, no entourage, no umbrella, no conference room between them. In her hand was the paper airplane, unfolded just enough to dry flat, the pink smear still visible, the WB-17 stamp still bleeding through, Noah's crooked words still intact. Elijah rose. Not quickly. Not deferentially. He simply stood because the room deserved respect, and so did he. Claire stepped inside and placed the airplane on Noah's bedside table before she said anything. Noah's eyes opened. You brought it back, he whispered. Claire's face changed, but she held herself together. It was yours. Then she looked at Elijah. The words she owed him were too small for what had happened, so she did not offer them alone. Your benefits are restored. Your suspension is revoked. The full footage has been shown to the board. Derek is under investigation. The jet will not move until an independent safety team clears it. Elijah listened without blinking. She waited for relief. For anger. For something she could understand. He gave her stillness. "Thank you for correcting the record," he said. Claire absorbed the boundary inside the gratitude. Correcting was not the same as healing. Noah picked up the paper airplane and held it between them. "Daddy," he asked softly, "does this mean the plane lady believes you now?" The room went quiet. Elijah looked at Claire, then back at his son. His answer came gentle, but it left no shortcut. "Believing is a start, champ. Trust takes longer." Claire lowered her eyes to the paper airplane in Noah's hand and understood that the truth had saved her reputation, maybe even her life, but it had not yet earned her a place inside their peace. By late afternoon, the rain had stopped. Not all at once. It thinned over the city until the hospital windows no longer trembled with it, until the parking lot held only shallow mirrors of sky. Elijah carried Noah's backpack in one hand and his toolbox in the other, moving slowly enough for his son to keep up without feeling slow. Noah wore his jacket over hospital scrubs, his dinosaur keychain bouncing against the zipper with every careful step. The paper airplane was back inside the front pocket, not hidden now, just safe. Elijah had smoothed the wings with the side of his thumb before they left the room, flattening the crease without erasing it. Some marks were supposed to stay. Claire walked a few steps behind them, not because she had been asked to, and not because she thought she belonged there. She had offered a car. Elijah had thanked her and pointed toward the old blue pickup waiting under a maple tree near the far curb. "He knows that truck," he said. That was all. No lecture. No insult. Just a father choosing familiarity over luxury for a child who had spent the night under fluorescent lights. Claire understood more from that refusal than she would have from acceptance. In her world, comfort was something delivered in leather seats and tinted glass. In Elijah's, comfort was the sound of an old engine that coughed twice before starting because Noah knew it always caught on the third try. At the truck, Noah climbed into the passenger seat with both hands, stubborn about doing it himself. Elijah let him. He stood close enough to catch him, far enough to give him pride. That small distance made Claire look away for a moment. It felt private. Sacred, almost. The kind of care no one announced. Vanessa waited near the sedan, giving Claire space without abandoning her. The board had gone quiet. Derek had been escorted out of the operations suite pending investigation. The jet remained grounded, its polished body useless until truth finished its work. None of it felt like victory. It felt like after a storm, when the broken branches were finally visible. Claire held a paper cup of coffee from the hospital cafeteria. Hot this time. Cheap. Slightly burnt. She had bought two without thinking, then stood for 3 minutes deciding whether the second one would seem like pity. In the end, she walked to Elijah and held it out without ceremony. "For the drive," she said. Elijah looked at the cup, then at her. There was no suspicion in his eyes now. No warmth offered too quickly either. Just a man measuring whether a gesture had learned humility. He accepted it. "Thank you." Noah leaned across the seat. "Daddy drinks it black." Claire almost smiled. "I guessed." Elijah glanced at his son. "You tell all my business now." Noah's grin came small but real. "Only the important stuff." The laugh that left Elijah was quiet, worn around the edges, but it changed the air more than any apology could have. Claire felt herself breathe differently. Less like a woman bracing for impact. More like someone allowed to stand still. She looked at Noah's backpack, at the paper airplane tucked inside, the wing peeking out beside the dinosaur keychain. "I owe him more than returning that," she said. Elijah placed the coffee in the cup holder, then rested one hand on the truck door. "He doesn't need more from you tonight." Claire absorbed the line. Not rejection. A boundary with kindness still inside it. And you? She asked. He looked toward the hospital entrance, then back to her. I need my job judged by the truth. My son's care not tied to someone's pride. And the next mechanic who says stop to be heard before money starts talking. Claire nodded. Slowly. There was no shortcut in what he asked. No check she could write to make it clean. It would take policy. Time. Public correction. Private restraint. The kind of work power avoided because it could not be photographed easily. You'll have that, she said. Then, after a beat, she added, and not because I'm doing you a favor. Elijah held her gaze. Good. The word was simple. It gave her less comfort than forgiveness would have, and more respect. Noah pulled the paper airplane from his backpack and held it up between them. The pink stain was still there. So was the WB-17 stamp. So were the crooked words. Daddy checks things twice. Can I make another one? He asked. Elijah raised an eyebrow. Out of school paper this time. Claire looked at the folded plane and saw no evidence bag, no board vote, no liability memo. Just a child trying to turn fear back into something that could fly. I can send proper paper, she said, then stopped herself. Elijah noticed the correction before she spoke it. Claire lowered her voice. Or you can tell me what kind he likes. Noah answered before his father could. Blue. Claire nodded as if blue paper had just become the most important procurement decision of her career. Blue, then. The old truck started on the third try. Noah beamed like the machine had kept a promise. Elijah rolled down the window, coffee steam rising between him and the cooling air. Claire stood beside the curb, ivory coat no longer spotless at the hem, phone silent in her pocket. For once, she did not reach for it. Mr. Brooks, she said. He looked over. The aircraft stays grounded until you say it's safe. Elijah rested his hand on the wheel. Then I'll check it twice. Noah leaned back, satisfied. Claire stepped away from the truck, and Elijah drove toward the exit, slow over the puddles, careful as ever. In the side mirror, Claire watched them leave until the truck became small beyond the gate. She did not feel rescued. Not exactly. She felt corrected. Invited, maybe, into a quieter way of seeing people. Behind her, the hospital doors slid open and closed, letting ordinary lives pass through with lunchboxes, prescriptions, flowers, tired hands, and hope folded into small shapes. The paper airplane rested in Noah's lap, stained but whole. Elijah did not raise his voice. He never needed to. He simply held the line until the world remembered that a life is worth more than a schedule, and respect is not something money gives. It is something character earns in silence.